service men and women. It's a true honor to represent the Coast Guard here in Western New York. And on their behalf, on behalf of all the uniformed services, I would like to thank you for your patriotism, support, and attendance here today. We are here to honor the service and sacrifices made by our brave servicemen and women, both past and present. We especially want to honor those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. And in this spirit, we unveil a memorial plaque for Lieutenant Thomas Eugene Crotty, a young Coast Guard officer who gave his life in defense of our country in the Pacific theater of World War II. Western New York has a long and proud history of military service. It is part of that history that I would like to share and celebrate with you today. It is the history of the South Buffalo native, Lieutenant Thomas James Eugene Crotty, known as Jimmy to his friends. Jimmy was born in 1912, the youngest in a family of 6, and raised in the old 5th Ward of Buffalo. He showed a self-starting initiative early in life. As an athlete, he competed for 3 years on the American Legion junior baseball team, and in 1929, during his senior year in high school, he managed and coached the team to win the Legion's junior national championship. Many of the trophies and photographs from Crotty's winning teams remain on display in an American Legion post on the south side of Buffalo. It was also during his senior year at Buffalo South Park High School he was accepted to the U.S. Coast Guard Academy. In the essay examination for the Academy, Crotty stated his opinion regarding the then nearly ratified London Naval Treaty of 1930. In words that would ring prophetic, he noted that the United States accepted a compromise with England and Japan, which gave to these countries exactly what they wanted, while the United States gained nothing, which was necessary for her to regain her power in the sea. Later in the essay he wrote, "War, that deadly horror which spreads destruction and ruin to many innocent and harmless countries, must be abolished." From these words, we were able to catch a glimpse into Jimmy's awareness of the world around him, his enthusiasm for academics, his sense of patriotic service, and the humanitarian fervor that the Coast Guard no doubt found as exactly the type of officer they wanted. During his years as an Academy cadet, Crotty continued to excel, participating in team sports. He played basketball for 3 years and competed in football all 4 years, serving as team captain his senior year. While at the Academy, he served as class vice president, then senior class president, and as company commander. After graduation, Jimmy had a brief but promising Coast Guard career, which hardened him into a mature leader, including duty on the cutter Tampa during its famous rescue of passengers from the burning liner Morro Castle, and as a Justice Department appointment as Special Deputy in the Bering Sea Patrol. Throughout these years, Jimmy continued to play on and coach Coast Guard sports teams. In the late 1930s, diplomatic tensions increased between the United States and Imperial Japan. And in 1941, Lieutenant Crotty was selected to train with the U.S. Navy in mine warfare. This training would make him the leading expert in mine warfare, demolition, and the use of explosives in the U.S. Coast Guard. In early October, Jimmy received orders to sail for the Philippines and join a Navy mine recovery unit at the fleet's home port, Manila. On December 10th, Japanese aircraft bombed and destroyed most of the facilities at Cabot, and advancing enemy ground forces necessitated the movement of American personnel behind fortified lines on the Bataan Peninsula and on the island fortress of Corregidor in Manila Bay. After the destruction of Cabot, Jimmy served a variety of roles with several units. In mid-December, he moved on board the minesweeper USS Quail as second in command. The Quail maintained minefields and cleared safe routes for Allied vessels to support the beleaguered forces. These minefields denied the Japanese Navy access to Manila Bay, allowed passage of American water traffic between Bataan, Corregidor, and other island defenses, and ensured that the U.S. submarines could surface at night to deliver goods and remove critical personnel. By mid-April, Jimmy left the Quail, and for the rest of the month he served as an adjutant to the headquarters staff of the 16th Naval District at Fort Mills. In addition, he served as a member of the Marine Corps 4th Regiment, 1st Battalion, which engaged landing enemy invasion forces on May 5th. An eyewitness report indicates that Jimmy supervised Army personnel manning a 75-millimeter field howitzer dug in on top of Olympha Hill, the small mountain that protected the island's fortress's underground command center. Jimmy's field piece faced east toward the oncoming Japanese troops, and he served up until the American forces surrendered in the afternoon of May 6th. With Corregidor's capitulation, Jimmy became the first Coast Guard prisoner of war since the War of 1812. The Japanese loaded Jimmy and his fellow prisoners into vessels bound for Manila, where the POWs awaited railroad shipment to a prison camp in northern Luzon. Eyewitnesses indicate that the prisoners had to stand up throughout the entire lengthy trip, and many of the weak and infirm that entered the boxcars never survived to exit them. Fellow prisoners reported that Jimmy's arrival at Camp Number 1, Cabanatuan Prison, where he lived in the barracks reserved for officers with the rank of lieutenant. At Cabanatuan, prisoners remembered Jimmy for his sense of humor and positive attitude, recounting his continued optimism and cheerfulness under the most adverse circumstances. He was outstanding in this respect at a time when such an attitude was so necessary for the general welfare. But Jimmy's character alone could not sustain him. On July 19th, he succumbed to diphtheria only 3 days after getting sick. A burial party gave Jimmy his last rites and buried him in a mass grave outside the prison walls. No one knows the exact location of Jimmy's gravesite, and he will likely remain the Coast Guard's final and only MIA. Records indicate that Lieutenant Crotty was the only active duty Coast Guardsman that fought the Japanese at Bataan and Corregidor, operations that merited authorization of the Defense of the Philippines Battle Streamer for the Coast Guard. Even though Crotty earned the Battle Streamer for the service, he received little individual recognition for his heroic efforts during those desperate months of 1941 and 1942. The story of Lieutenant Crotty has been all but lost and forgotten, like so many of his fallen comrades from Bataan and Corregidor. Thomas James Eugene Crotty performed exceptional duty under trying circumstances and distinguished himself as he ultimately served in every armed service of the United States. The official U.S. Marine Corps history for the defense of Corregidor concludes that those who fought in the ranks of the 4th Marine Regiment, whatever their service of origin, were, if only for a brief moment, Corregidor Marines. Lieutenant Crotty served his men and his country to the best of his ability under the most cruel and inhumane conditions. In a letter to Jimmy's mother, his boyhood friend, Bill Joyce, concluded, "He left this world a better place than he found it, and I am more than thankful that I was honored to know him." Serving here in Buffalo has given me an opportunity to build relationships with the Western New York community and become acquainted with the history of Lieutenant Crotty's service to our nation and ultimately the world. His actions and sacrifices made in a war that he hoped to never see have inspired me to become a better servant to the American people, a better shipmate to my fellow coasties, and a better person. Lieutenant Crotty's memory is but one of many heroes from Western New York that have served and continue to serve our nation. This memorial will be permanently displayed on the outside wall of the Naval Park Museum building. It is my hope that this memorial will help everyone who views it to remember the sacrifices made by our armed services and the true cost of freedom. Thank you again for your attendance, and may God bless the United States of America. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now have the pleasure of hearing a musical tribute to Coast Guard service and sacrifice in a number titled Home from the Sea, performed by the American Legion Band of the Tonawondas with vocals.